Today I'm building the World War I LEGO Battle of the Somme. My first LEGO World War I trench build was good, the second one was even better, and the third was interesting. But this time I'm going to be using real World War I photography to inspire this build. Specifically these 8 pictures, which are all from the Battle of the Somme. Let's use this picture as an example. If I just take these 2 LEGO World War I minifigures, give them a Vickers machine gun, and put them in a crater, voila! And in front of me right now is the base plate. Is the base plate I'm gonna be using for the build. It looks big now. Legit almost dropped it. Now before we get started, let's first run through a checklist of everything I'm gonna need for this build. If you've seen my previous LEGO trench builds, then you already know that I have a British minifigure army. By the looks of it, most of the British infantry are holding Lee Enfield bolt-action rifles fixed with bayonets. Now I've got Lee Enfields, but they don't have bayonets. There's a simple fix for that though, as I can just add these accessories onto the end. Now whilst the Battle of the Somme was the first time that the tanks actually got to see combat, I've decided not to use them in this LEGO trench build, basically just because they take up too much space. Now for the Germans, again I already have a German minifigure army. I also have a German machine gun team which will be using a belt-fed MG08. The Battle of the Somme took place in 1916, which is why you can see the machine gunners have a Stahlhelm, specifically the distinctive M16. M standing for model and 16 standing for the year it was produced. In my German LEGO army, I even have field guns and artillery which roughly match the images, though whilst the field gun looks about right, I might need to build a bigger artillery. Finally, for the landscape itself, this will be assembled as we go. I do, however, have a collection of craters and trees which I can just place down whenever I need to. Now, if you've been wondering, what is this mess and why have I built it? Well... Well, here's the answer. These are structural braces which hold everything together sort of like a spine, which is why I can pick it up and it doesn't just fall to pieces. In previous LEGO trench builds, I've created plans which help template and mark out where everything goes. But before I can do that, I first need to actually build the floor. Aha, I have made a realization, and something that will hopefully save me time later on. Remember how I just told you about these pre-built craters? Well, I just had the realization I should probably do that before it's too late and I've got to dig things up to place them down. So, what do we think? Tell you what, let's not overthink it. Let's just start placing. One of them is going to go here. One of them is going to go... here. You see, it's already... I've already done myself and there's not enough space for it.
Several bad puns later.
And one of them is going to go where this had just been placed. Now, you might be able to tell, but the start of that video was quite well planned out. From this point onwards, nothing is planned and I'm already hitting problems. If I didn't put these onto legs and just stuck them down, they would probably be too far into the ground. So I'm going to elevate them and then just hope it kind of works. This always happens. I'm sure it'll be fine. It'll be fine, it'll be fine. Right, now to place the second crater. It's going to go there. No, yes. Yes, it's going to go here. Okay, the third crater has 3 legs. It's got 4 legs of 3... Good God. It's gonna go somewhere over here. That's the important bit. Again, remember the 8 pictures from the Battle of the Somme we're using to inspire this build. I've now placed 3 crater pieces, which I probably won't be able to move again. And the reason why that's actually quite important, well, now those 8 pictures have to fit around these pre-built craters. It means that we've got less space to work with. Ah, well. Let's carry on. So that's the majority of the flooring placed down, which means, and by the way, yes, I know there are gaps, I can finally create and plan and template where everything is going to go. Now to mark everything out, I'm going to use these red plates. In my previous LEGO trench builds, I spent hours and hours placing and replacing wedges. In this build, I'm only going to be using plates and tiles, basically to save time. You may also remember that the way that I designed and built my first ever trench was massively stupid and haunts me to this day. In this build, I won't be doing that because it was really dumb. However, I will be trying to bring this LEGO mock to life with something else by upgrading my LEGO minifigures with highly detailed LEGO accessories. So the first thing that I want to do is try to match this picture as closely as possible. There's a United Bricks World War I LEGO minifigure which would be just about perfect, but predictably, it's out of stock. I've got a World War II German minifigure with stick grenade bags, but nothing for World War I. Stay tuned to figure out if we actually managed to find one or not. I don't know. I don't know, so I'm as much in the dark as you, if not more. And cut to the next day. All of the flooring is down, which means we can finally start templating where everything is going to go using these red parts here. Now, there's 8 pictures we need to fit into this mock, so let's take it one picture at a time, starting with this picture here. Alright, just to make things confusing, what I have done, by the way, is I've flipped the entire mock around. Bruh. Don't ask me why. Which means the British will be over here and the Germans will be over here. And so, I think the duck boards should go somewhere over here. So it kind of goes like a bit left and then left and then left. We'll try and make sure we accurately do that. The second picture will be the British machine gun team. I think we don't overcomplicate this. I think we just get the machine gun Vickers team literally just in one of these trenches down here like that. Not trenches, craters rather. Just off to the side of the duck boards. The third picture is an explosion. Now this bit's actually going to be quite difficult to make because it's not a crater. I actually need to make the debris going up into the air. So I just need to figure out where I'm going to do that. Okay, so that is where we're going to put the big explosion, and it will hopefully give the mock a little bit of three-dimensionality. There's nothing worse than a mock that's just too flat. The fourth picture to recreate is the German field gun, which seems to have been knocked out. Let's think about this. I think we should get that a bit further forward. Yeah, because the trenches will be behind it, I suppose. So it'll be quite a forward position. So this is where we're going to put the knocked out field gun, or I don't know, semi-operational field gun. I'm not sure exactly what it is yet. The fifth picture is of the British infantry charging over no man's land. We should be able to template this quite easily. I'm just going to take a couple of minifigures. The picture itself is not that many, guys, and this is a nice bit of real estate back here that's not currently being used. I reckon we get the charge back here. Of course, I will be using Gordon Highlanders to roughly template where it's going to go. I know it doesn't really make sense, come to think of it. I've used Gordon Highlanders because in the picture they are not wearing kilts, but it's just a template for the time being. The sixth picture is this German soldier. I guess we get him. I mean, he kind of looks a little bit away from like the main battle. He's not really involved in it, but it doesn't. Well, the picture doesn't look like it's actually taken in battle. It looks like he's kind of just chilling a little bit, but we're gonna put him in anyway. Hey, let's get him over here. I don't know. Maybe he's just woken up and he's just realized that they're being charged by the enemy. The seventh picture is a German machine gun team with an MG08 and M16 Stahlhelms. I mean, they've kind of got to be in a trench somewhere here. So like the duck boards are advancing forward here, and I guess we've got a machine gun position which can be connected into this back here. The eighth and final picture is the German artillery into a dug-in artillery position. I think it would probably make sense to have it somewhere near the back, because then there's a good spread. Yeah, okay, we're gonna go with that. Okay, everything's been marked down. I'm actually interested to see how closely we can match each of these 8 pictures and whether or not I can get all of them onto this one LEGO World War I trench build. It's a big ask. Yes, I intend to be picking this up the entire way through the video. Will I regret it? Almost definitely. I know this makes no sense at all because I've only just templated it, but yes, I'm now going to dig up that template so that I can place the base layer of brown. Just gotta remember where everything actually goes. Okay, you know how the saying goes, work hard, not smart. Now for the very bottom layer, I'm going to use dark brown, and then I'll use reddish brown for the upper layer. Hopefully it'll make it look like it's like wet and moist soil at the bottom. I don't know how well it's going to work out, and I don't know if I've got enough parts, but the only thing I can do is hope for the best and give it a go. Starting now. Okay, we're about 10 seconds in, and I already know I've not got enough parts. Ah, well. Now before we go any further, one thing that doesn't make any sense, and I don't know why I've done it, I have left a gap around the entire thing. I don't know why. I honestly have no idea why I've done that, and it serves no practical purpose. Now, what you can see, I've kind of tried to build up the terrain around each of these craters here. The thought process is that I'm going to use this reddish brown for like the higher terrain, so it looks like it's more dried out. And then the lowest terrain, I'll use this dark reddish brown. So this will be, for example, we'll have the duck boards that go along here, and then hopefully like a bit of water either side in here too. And in case you're wondering, yes, this is how I dig up all my Lego. Yes, it destroys it. but honestly, it gets it done quicker, and that's all I cared about. These guys are desperate. Oh, I tell you what, I was looking for my, like, where all my brown bits were. They're all on these base plates. No wonder I didn't have any. They're literally all stuck on those base plates down here. All right, well, mystery solved, rather. Let's continue. Okay, now before you ask, why oh why is there a severed head on your Lego MOC? As for the answer to that question, there isn't one. As I'm sure we all can agree, severed heads are great. And also, hopefully now you can see, just brush past that. Hopefully now you can see, roughly speaking, what I was going for here. So a lot of dark brown. In fact, I'll tell you what, I could do you one better. Instead of pointing from a foot, what's loose? Oh no, there's loose parts in it. No! Again, this will be blended in. It's not just going to be dark brown. It's going to be slightly nicer. But what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to try and get some of the reddish brown in here just to give it a little bit more depth. Who's ready for another really bad time lapse? Hold up, I've got to address this. Hold on. I don't know if you guys can see, and I honestly don't know when this happened, but one time, for some reason, I broke something, and this piece up here, that piece broke off and wedged itself in the soundproofing, and it's been there for like coming up on a year. I don't know how it happened, but I've just done it again. One of the Lego bricks wouldn't fit, so I just threw it off to the side, and that's going to be another long-term piece of art that I'm going to keep. Now, what you can see me doing over here is I'm going to try and elevate all of this terrain. Like I said, the dark brown will be the lowest bits, and then the reddish brown we'll use for the higher bits. It's not going to look perfect, but this is what I've got to do because I don't have enough parts.
72 hours later.
Time for another build update. But first, another pickup test, and it has passed once again. Now, for those of you with eyes and a brain, which I know for a fact some of you don't have at least one of those things, some progress has been made on the build. I've roughly marked out the position of the German trenches, which allows me to add back the artillery, the German machine gun team, and the field gun. You may also notice the duckboards now winding through the craters and also a placeholder for where our British infantry will be charging. However, that's not the biggest thing we need to discuss. In my old Lego World War I trench builds, the way that I actually built the trenches was not very smart, to say the least. Now, yesterday, I was trying to figure out how I was actually going to build them and hopefully not mess it up. The first of the example trench parts that I put together was just a bit flat, boring, and uninteresting. And then I had the idea to actually angle them and put in an angled firing step. Now, genuinely, I'm really very proud of this because I didn't use an example to design this. I came up with this myself. Probably would have been easier to have just looked it up, but now that's not the only thing I've been working on. I was also trying to figure out how I was actually gonna create the big crater explosion with debris going all over the place. After some trial and error, this was my first attempt. My second attempt was a little bit better. But honestly, by the time it got to my third attempt, it's actually, in fact, it looks a bit worse looking at it on this camera. I don't know. It looks alright when you put it down. Now, this will be placed somewhere like that. Let's say, for example. Now, I've also been preparing some prefabricated Lego World War I trenches. Like the example design I showed earlier, this comes in two parts. One of them is just a flat wall, and the other one has a firing step. Now, they will be placed all the way along this wall here. For those of you wondering why I've made them like this, well, for one, the Germans did tend to have a little bit more complex concrete-based trench systems, but if I'm completely honest with you, I don't have enough browns or light bluish grey, and so it basically just has to be made of dark bluish grey. With that being said, time to do some building. Now, as you might expect, before I can actually put the trench parts on, I first need to build up the wall to then connect it on. This is kind of one of those trust the process, bro, kind of techniques. I'll be honest, I'm quite proud of the way that I've built this, and it seems to be going quite well, so let me show you in a bit more detail. Okay, so taking a closer look at the build, I want to make sure the trenches are at an angle, and that's exactly what this design here achieves. I will then put a final layer of reddish brown over the top like that, which hopefully will then look really nice. There shouldn't be a seam over here. That's the idea. Again, this side over here is going to be flat. However, the other side is in fact going to have a firing step, so it should, oh, not quite like that. It's not quite at the right angle, but you get the idea. My hope is that once that has been done, that will probably be the nicest, most high quality trench I've made so far. And also now looking at this again, it probably needs a bit more work. It looks a little bit, I don't know, let me know in the comments. Now with that being said, we need to actually start putting in those trench walls, which sounds easy, but I know it won't be. So let's first start with the flat wall, and we'll do the firing steps after. I'm also going to get started on another build project. This giant Millennium Falcon, which today's video sponsor has kindly provided. Fanhome creates original in-house designs. If you take a look at their website, you'll find some really impressive models, all of which you can choose to collect by subscribing. Then every month you'll receive parts and exclusive products so that you can assemble the model at a manageable pace. To spice things up even more, all subscribers will also get a die-cast Millennium Falcon, this mug. Not the mug, it's just really hot. And this cap, and also a binder and a bunch of other things too. So if you're interested in this or any other Fanhome designs, then be sure to use my link in the description and the pinned comment. Let's see how it looks on the ground. Hopefully you'll agree that this has actually come together relatively nicely. Now you will also notice, of course, there are gaps here, okay? So there's a gap between this and there's also gaps on these edges here. I will fill those in at the end. But if we take a look at these firing steps, again, I'm only putting firing steps on the larger bits. That seems to have actually come together pretty nicely. Now, when I say prefabricated trench, well, what I mean is I built it just before I started recording. It's not from somewhere. Now, as I showed you what I did over here, I'm now going to do the same all the way along. So we want to hide these connections. We don't want anyone to see the bits that's holding it all together. We want it to look like there's a nice seam, whereas you can see here, it looks like the dirt comes right up to the edge of the trench. This is going surprisingly well. Frankly, it's about time something went wrong.
1 week later.
Now, I've been away for the last week, which, yes, of course, means it's time for another pickup test. And... Alright, so I would give that a 10 out of 10 for not falling apart in my hands. It's getting heavy as well. Christ. Now, with that really, really important test out the way, let's figure out what the next steps are gonna be. First, I'm gonna build a duckboard path that goes through the mud and the water. Then I'm gonna build up the rest of the terrain that's actually around the trenches, which allows us to level off the rest of the terrain over here so that it doesn't look so flat. Now, you also may have spotted some random red towers on the build. Well, no, these are not in fact features of the build. Rather, they're placeholders for trees, which we will then place once the rest of the terrain has been built. So with that being said, let's get started on the duckboards, which for clarity's sake is this picture here, where you can see there's water either side, 2 men and trees in the background. Alright, so you might remember that we used these red plates to kind of mark out where the duckboards are going to go. However, if we take these red plates off, then you should be able to see where I've marked out a bunch of studs. Now, using these reddish brown tiles, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them on top of these studs to get our duckboard looking effect, I suppose. Aha, I just realized, before we do that, we need to place the puddles. Got it wrong immediately. And there we go. Hopefully now you can see roughly what I'm going for. I would say that that looks roughly like a wet puddle, and then if you imagine I just place these planks over the top of them like this, then hopefully we're going to get something that looks or resembles ever so slightly a duckboard effect, except I'm doing this with my left hand and it's really not going well. Okay, so we've got the beginnings of something that looks reasonably okay. However, I have just made a very unfortunate discovery. Whilst I'm placing those duckboards, the duckboards need to go on top of tiles because if there's a stud that's poking out, obviously it can't be placed. Which means I now have to find dark brown tiles to place all the way along the duckboard path simply so I can place them. So basically I've got to find a bunch of tiles and just hope I've got enough. I don't know if I do. It's not going to be enough. I placed 2 and I already know. Okay, that's me out of these tiles. Let's move on to the next set. Okay, I've come to a realization, a very important one that took me a very long time to reach. I am an idiot. Yes, I've run out of dark brown tiles, which means I'm gonna have to shorten the duckboard track. And if you remember, we're trying to recreate this historical image. This is always the case with Lego. There's just never enough parts. It doesn't matter how well you plan, you just will run out. Not that I plan very well. And there we go, that's as far as I'm gonna get with the amount of tiles I've actually got. Then just as a placeholder for the moment, we'll stick that guy face down here and his friend somewhere here. So remember, this is just a placeholder because I know it looks bad. So hopefully it's somewhat clear. You can kind of see I'm trying to recreate those 2 guys. You can see the puddle behind them, the helmet that's on the duckboards, and then it starts to veer off to the left as we progress. You'll notice that there's still quite a few blank studs there because I ran out of tiles. again, I can't place these duck boards on something that has a stud protruding out of them. With the duck boards down, we can now move on to building up the terrain around the 3 trenches. Well, it's not 3 trenches, the 3 positions in the trenches. Which is gonna be tricky because, once again, predictably, I'm out of reddish-brown bricks, or very close to out of them, and I'm also out of brown bricks, so for a trench build, it's really not going very well, is it? Now, with that being said, what I am going to do is I'm going to get resourceful. Now, what I mean by that is that, yes, I'm pretty much entirely out of bricks themselves. However, I've still got slopes and plates and other bits and bobs that I can hopefully piece together to get the elevation that we need. Now, for clarity's sake, there should be a slow incline across the whole of the build. It kind of starts off low here and then builds up to the trenches at the back. At the minute, you can see these are like trench positions, but they're completely unfortified, and so we need to build the terrain up to roughly this height over here. Now, to achieve that, this is how many bricks I have left, and these are like corner bits as well. So yeah, challenge accepted. I think it's fair to say at this point that starting a LEGO YouTube channel was arguably the worst financial decision I've ever made, and I would not recommend anyone tries it ever. Definitely not salty. All right, let the desperation begin. I swear somebody's like robbing my flat. Like, where are all my bricks going? After watching that, some of you might be thinking, what the hell's going on? What's he doing? So let me explain. Yes, desperation has set in. Let me finally explain what I'm trying to do. To try and minimize the amount of reddish-brown bricks that I actually need to basically build this terrain up, what I'm first doing is I'm placing down light bluish-grey bricks, and then I will use these brown tiles on top of them. Not quite like that, but I don't know, maybe you get the idea, maybe you don't. Essentially, I'm trying to do more with less because I just don't have enough bricks. This is what I mean. Now, I know what you're thinking. It looks awful, and yes, you're right. However, I made it sound like I had some big grand plan. I don't really, to be honest. It's probably going to look bumhole, but we're going to give it a go. I just remembered that in previous trench builds, I used these log palisade-looking bricks. I'm going to use those on the inside of the trench wall. I know it's not dark bluish-grey like the rest of the trench walls, but I literally have no more parts. I should just make smaller builds. This is probably the solution. So I'm making an executive decision to just stop doing that because, well, I think it's fair to say that this has turned into an absolute living hell and nothing is going particularly well anymore, so I'm going to do this off camera. So instead of doing that, what I'm going to focus on now is I'm going to start doing some of the terrain detailing around here so it's not all just dark brown. I want to save you the pain and misery of watching me go through this bit by bit, one plate at a time. Look at the mess. Look at it's such a shame because the trenches are so nice, man. Like if I just had more dark bluish grey bricks, I could have done that in the trenches as well. So for the time being, let's get rid of these not trees so we can get some terrain down. So as we all know by now, I'm running out of plates for reddish brown, but I do have a lot of wedges which I can just turn into plates. Now this has got to go for now. Let's pick that up and stick it over there. Alright, hopefully you'll agree this is starting to look a little bit better. It's by no stretch of the imagination done, but what it does do is it gives the impression of there's kind of this like deeper, wetter dirt region again. I'm gonna have to do something because at the minute the puddle is literally protruding from the ground. But hopefully what you can see is that it will start to come together. I imagine once we get these trees down, again, these are definitely trees, we'll take them from over here, these pre-built trees here and also here. Once we get the trees in, once we get some more detailing, once we got the shrubbery and all these other bits down, hopefully it will start to look good. I just need to fix this absolute chaotic mess over here. And to save you from getting an aneurysm watching me try to do that, I'm gonna do it off camera and I'll update in the morning. It would be sad if this was my, third or fourth or fifth maybe World War I trench build and it was the worst one yet. If I'm going backwards, getting worse as we go. Yeah, that would be sad.
24 hours later.
So I've got a confession to make. As you can see, I've just got a little bit completely carried away. This is heavy now. Okay, as you can see, I've kind of gone off the reservation, completely off script, and I just started building. I've hit some difficulties, let's say. Look at the size of this. This is absolutely wild. I can't believe this is actually holding together. It's heavy, but let me give you some build updates. I just need to put it down first to remove this definitely not falling over piece. It's broken. Okay, so first and foremost, what I've done is I've added in the trees where the red pillars used to be. Again, these are pre-builds I actually just
to be quite frank, just ripped off of that base plate there. I've also just realized that this minifigure's head is still there for some reason, but what the trees do is they help give the entire trench build a bit more three-dimensionality, so it doesn't look so flat. Now, I've also used a bunch of barbed wire that goes all the way along the front hill. Now, again, desperation really sat in. When I was trying to build this part here, I completely ran out of parts, which is why you can see it's just like, it's basically just any part that I could get my hands on just to actually try and get that hill. Just behind the barbed wire, you will now see I've placed down some sandbags, and then behind the sandbag positions, what I've done is I've actually made the inside of the trench dark grey on the ground the whole way along. To be quite honest, it's because I didn't have enough parts to do anything else. So that basically means it's got concrete walls and a concrete floor, and then again I've used the reddish brown parts on the craters where we can see these guys just to hide the dark brown that's under it. You can still see some cracks in here, but you know, screw it. But overall, it's starting to come together. It's starting to look a little bit like a trench build. Kind of. Now, to be completely honest, if I compare this build to my last couple of trench builds, I honestly think the quality here might be a bit worse, but it's about 3 times the size, which is the problem. I just don't have enough parts to get that level of detail into a build that size. However, I will do my best. I might even put the tank on it. Yeah, tanks are cool, man. I'm gonna put the tank on it. Even on a build this size, it's just, where do I even get it? Oh, come on. No, why is it disassembling itself? Now is not the time. All right. Tank's going away. That was a successful attempt. Good job, mate. So remember this picture here? Let's get this guy down. Again, he doesn't have the grenade pouches, but what we will do with him is we're gonna stick him somewhere there. Literally a sniper's dream. He's got no cover whatsoever. Now, let's place some other dudes down. This guy's not technically part of the pictures. This guy is holding a tank gewehr. Now, there isn't actually a tank for it to gewehr. So let's just slap him down. Some unfortunate soul is going to get hit by that. Have a very, very bad day. Right, we're going to get down all the Gordon Highlanders charging down here. And just like that, it's done. Magic. Now, once again, remember, we were trying to recreate the Battle of the Somme and specifically try our best to match 8 pictures. 8 pictures, definitely 8. Now, before we do that, it's important to understand that I have literally completely run out of parts. And so some of them are not going to be perfect. But with that being said, let's go through one by one and see how closely we've managed to match them. This is how I've tried to recreate the first picture. You can see we've got the duck boards. We've also got the puddle. We've got the guy leaning over the casualty with the helmet on the duck boards, but you will also remember I did literally fully run out of parts on that. The second picture can be found over here in the craters. These are 2 British machine gunners on a Vickers machine gun. They're in a crater and they're putting shots downrange into the German position. To recreate the third picture, which is a big explosion, I had a couple of different variations of explosion. To be honest, it's not quite as big as I'd like it to be, but I have used it to kind of explain why the duck boards just suddenly end all of a sudden. Now, picture number 4 is not perfect, to be honest. It's this knocked out field gun down here. You'll see in the picture that there's supposed to be logs over the top here and it's supposed to be unmanned. I just don't have any more brown parts. So this was the best that I feel like I could do with what I had at my disposal. Now, for the 5th picture, we have these gentlemen. If I can get my phone down here. These gentlemen down here. You might notice in this picture, there's actually an officer in the background, which is what that dude there is. In fact, that's Mr. Bean, Blackadder, and the rest of them are charging up over the top. This picture is an interesting one because it's this gentleman here who is probably in the least tactical position of all time. If I try and get the camera down, you can see he's just kind of chilling there. We didn't manage to find one with the grenade pouches, and he is completely exposed behind absolutely no cover from the enemy advance, but nonetheless, that is the recreation that I've gone for. The 7th picture is, of course, going to be the German machine gun team. They've got a belt-fed MG08, they've got M16 Stahlhelms, and they are in a crater. However, they didn't have barbed wire, there weren't guys behind them, but it's inspired by it, let's say. And then finally, we've got the artillery position over here for the final position. Again, if we scooch around, it's still a little bit closer than the field gun, but it's still not quite perfect. What I'm going to do for my next build is I'm probably going to not go so big. And actually, I used to have the table over in the corner there. I'm going to move everything back over there because I've gone too big and I literally just run out of parts and I cannot afford to get more. So there you have it, the LEGO World War I Battle of the Somme. Check out this video over here. Yeah.